Today we visit one of our favorite southeastern gardens to discuss fall color and how to keep your garden vibrant year-round. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned as we garden smart in Georgia.
Bring the outdoors into your everyday life. Bass Pro Shops can outfit all your adventures, even those in your backyard. Bass Pro Shops, your adventure starts here.
A preformed hedge unit with 4 plants grown together, ready to plant. Instant Hedge, designed to create a finished look after installation.
The Jaguar F-Pace.
Autumn is the second spring when every leaf is a flower. That quote from Albert Camus has never been truer than in the foothills of the North Georgia mountains. The rolling hills, abundance of springs and streams, and mature shade trees create a truly unique backdrop for fall color. Today we return to Gibbs Gardens and visit our friend Jim Gibbs. Gibbs Gardens' amazing diversity of trees provide a spectacular display of color during the months of September, October, and November. We'll discover which plants, trees, and shrubs you can use to brighten up your surrounding when summer's over. Jim, welcome back to the show. So good to see you.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
Today we're going to be talking about gardening in the fall. It's a super exciting topic. Before we dive into that, I'd like you to talk a little bit about your book that just came out that I'm really excited about.
I'm really excited about the book. Took me 2.5 years to write the book. The title of the book is Gibbs Gardens, Reflections on a Gardening Life. It has more than 200 beautiful, beautiful pictures. So it's not just a storybook, it's a picture book. As I started working on it, I decided, well, this could be sort of a combination coffee table book. The book actually takes the reader on a 30-year journey from the time I started transforming pastures and fields into Gibbs Gardens, which is a 326-acre world-class estate garden in North Georgia. And I go through the book and I first point out that to me, gardening genes are very, very important because I think most gardeners have gardening genes, and my 2 grandmothers were avid gardeners. My mother and her 4 sisters were avid gardeners, so I listened to them talk gardening all the time, so that was fun. But as we went through it, I had to think about the dream, how to keep the dream alive. It was 30 years in the making to build the garden. It started in 1980 and bought the property then, completed the gardens and opened them to the public in 2012. So it was a long time to keep the passion and the dream and all of it alive. So the book explains that and tells about it, and if people are interested, they can go to gibbsgardens.com and they'll be able to order it there.
Wonderful. Well, today we're talking about fall gardening, and there's so much that happens in the garden that time of year. And many gardeners, in fact, consider the fall their favorite time of year, their favorite season to garden in. Why do you think that is, Jim?
I think the reason everybody enjoys spring and fall, they're both very popular, but the fall of the year, you've been through a hot, usually dry summer, a lot of humidity, And then all of a sudden in the fall, the nights become a little cooler, the days become shorter, and you begin to see changes taking place. And I love to see the changes that occur every day in a garden, but none change more than in the fall of the year. And then I think the thing you have to do is begin to say, well, it's time to plan the garden. Let's really think about what we're going to do for the garden. And it gets down to serious studying of the plant materials you're going to select and what you're going to do, how you're going to design the walkways, where you're going to put your features or your sculptures or whatever you're going to be using. And look around. I mean, look at the different colors that are in there. Every one is a flower, and it's just magnificent. So it excites you. So everybody gets excited in the fall of the year.
Jim, we talked about the need and the importance of being thoughtful in the way that we design our garden for different seasons. And one thing that's very important to keep in mind is texture. How are all these plants going to interplay? And I wanted to ask you, how do you think about that aspect of design in your gardening?
The first thing I do is what you said, is think about the texture of the plants. I think there are three textures that have to be considered in every design. You have some leaves that have a sharp point. Some leaves have very feathery, loose texture. You want to mix those with the sharp and the contrast. But I always go with a sharp, a smooth rounded, and a feathery texture. If you think about those three textures in every or each area of your garden, you're going to create different greens also. So the light greens, medium greens, and dark greens all mix together well. Once you've come up with your texture, you just need to keep going from one garden space to another, but always use the three textures in each area.
Let's talk about trees, because trees bring so much structure to the garden, and they tend to be more permanent features as compared to annuals and perennials and even smaller shrubs. What are you looking for in the way of trees from a standpoint of fall interest?
Well, of course, the first thing I think about is the background is normally going to be native trees.
Right.
So you have all the different colors for that background. As you move in closer, you're going to be putting usually some understory trees in front of those more native type trees. And one thing that I always like to use are sourwood trees. You have sassafras with that electric sort of orange neon color that's so beautiful. And then you have the dogwoods that of course have that sort of reddish to purplish cast of those. But as we move in, we've got black gums, we've got American beech, that have the bright yellow leaves on them. There's so many plants that we select that are going into a garden that give you some of that understory year-round interest.
One category we can't overlook is the Japanese maples, and I'd love for us to take a stroll through your garden and take a look at some of those.
Great, would love to show you.
As far as fall color goes, it'd be difficult to imagine a category of plants with greater impact than Japanese maples. They are the queens of the garden, and this is the time of year where they really shine. I know for many gardeners, if you start looking at the hundreds and hundreds of cultivars and varieties that exist, it's a little overwhelming. I mean, there are enormous books that have been written about Japanese maples. I'd like to discuss just a way of looking at the category from a standpoint of different textures and different types that help make a little more sense to the home gardener.
Well, of course, here at Gibbs Gardens, we're standing in an area that has over 100 cultivars right where we're standing, and they are beautiful. So there's so many you can select from, and you do have, as you mentioned, gardening books. You can go to those gardening books and look at the colors of the pictures and select what you want. But they have so many, many different textures. But I think when you mention the homeowner, we've got to think about a smaller garden also.
Right.
So some people only have enough space for maybe 3 Japanese maples, but they love Japanese maples. Then I think it's important to think first about the taller Japanese maple that would be placed in the rear of the garden. And then you would come down in front of that with maybe a size that's a little smaller. And then you work forward to one of your dwarf Japanese dissectum maples that's much lower. So wherever you are, you're building up to the background or coming from the back to you by working your way down. Or for me personally, I would want to select a yellow Japanese maple with beautiful yellow color. That one is easy to select. I would always select Sango Kaku, which is the coral bark Japanese maple. It has a beautiful yellow-green when it first comes out. Then it turns more of a bright yellow, and then it goes to sort of a peach color with sort of yellow oranges in it. And the nicest thing is when it drops its leaves, all of the stems are coral or reddish color. So it has great winter interest. Then in the spring it comes out again with beautiful sort of chartreuse leaves that then turn green, and beautiful dainty little lacy leaves too. So it's a beautiful maple. Now the other thing, I think everybody wants a red maple. So if you're going to use red maple, go with a little taller one in the background, which could be, of course, the Bloodgood is very popular because it has bright red leaves in the spring also, not just the fall. Emperor, which is sort of a reddish purple leaf, of course, from the spring through to fall, and it turns a bright red. And the nicest thing about that particular maple is it is hardier for frost, late frost, because it comes out a little later. And therefore, the Bloodgood would come into fall color first, completely finished, drop its leaves. Then you have Emperor 1, which is a cultivar, that's going to be that beautiful bright red for another 2 or 3 weeks. So you extend your fall color. Then for me, the smaller dissecta maples with the beautiful lace leaf, cut leaf leaves that everybody wants, they're dwarf. If you do have a sunny area, to me, there are only 2 dwarfs that do well in the sun, Mukiyama and also the Crimson Queen. But they also do great with morning sun up until 2 o'clock. Now, all Japanese maples do best if they have morning sun till 2 o'clock. But there's some areas, for example, here out in the sun, I use Crimson Queen or I use Mukiyama. So it would do in either full sun or part shade. For, of course, if you have an upright serriu, for example, that maple right there behind us is beautiful. That's an upright cut leaf Japanese maple. And there's no maple any prettier than that. So you could use that as a background also.
Well, I love all those selections because these are ones that are generally available. Most garden centers, and especially the fine independent garden centers, would stock nearly every single one of these.
Easy to find.
Another element in the fall garden that can bring some tremendous value are berries on either trees, shrubs, and sometimes ground covers. And you have many, many examples of those here at Gibbs Garden. What are some of your favorites among berry producing plants?
Well, of course, one of my all-time favorites is Nandina domestica. Beautiful clusters of red berries that hang down and drape. They'd almost waterfall if you look at them. They have, of course, the white flowers in the spring, and then the white flowers later turn to red berries. Beauty berries, another very popular one here. We have the white beauty berries and the purple. Nice thing about beauty berry, it will seed, and you'll get a lot of new ones around, and if you want to then transplant them, you can, or give them to friends and neighbors. So, you know, part of gardening is to share seeds and to share cuttings and plants with other people. The other thing would be, of course, your hollies, the great American holly, Ilex opaca, which has the red berries. Remember, you're going to get more berries near the end because a lot of those berries are green and they're going to turn red later, and then they will carry through. Of course, you've got the birds that are going to come in for the berries too later. Viburnums are wonderful for berries. By the way, Michael Durr has just come out with a brand new book, Viburnums. I don't know if you've seen it, but as you and I know, he's one of our favorites. And he shows pictures of all the viburnums and all the ones with the beautiful berries and the beautiful flowers. You know, I love winterberry because it's just covered with red berries. Now that's the one you're going to need to have a male pollinator. And the 2 male pollinators would be Jim Dandy and Mr. Poppins. They're both great, easy to find, and they work out well. So I think as we go through another, you mentioned ground covers. Now the Nippon lily, which we have many of those in the gardens, they're very low plants have the sort of the dark green lily leaf, but they have the clusters of red berries that right now are beginning to extend their stem, and they really come up through the foliage and make a big show. So they're beautiful also.
Well, I think one that we oftentimes don't think about in terms of berries, but it can be quite showy, is just the broader family of junipers. You know, glaucous, purple berries that also, you know, birds love to eat.
And they're beautiful with the red berries to contrast. So you've got the contrast of colors, and they're wonderful also.
Yeah, and you mentioned viburnum. That's one of my favorites, and there's an incredible range of colors that exist there. You have almost black to something like blueberry muffin that's this
right.
Wonderful, like bright blue color. And most of these plants that we mentioned also have great fall color, and so you're getting the benefit of the wonderful fall color. So you have the berries, and you have also something that's going to hold up through the winter and give you that structure in the garden.
The other nice thing about berries, for example, you've got the Nandina berry that's totally different, where you get clusters of berries in groups clustered on branches, and that makes a garden different in the winter. Just when you look at the foliage and the way the berries show up against the evergreen foliage. So that's important to sort of mix different kinds of berries together.
Another category of plants for the fall garden that we definitely should not overlook is ground covers. And they have a way of kind of cohesively bringing everything together and also defining different areas of the garden. And also the contrast of the different greens and the different textures with the trees and shrubs and their beautiful fall color is so important. You've got so many wonderful examples here at Gibbs Gardens, from sedges to grasses to, of course, tons of ferns. I'd like for you to talk through some of the ones that you really like and that have been most successful for your garden and how they work into your fall garden design.
Well, of course, Eric, we're in a nice area right here. This is a good example of what you just mentioned. Notice that we have the trees, and we have even the dissecta maples. Once those trees start getting larger, their fibrous roots spread out. If you start earlier with ground covers and let them move into the base of the tree, when these trees all drop their leaves, you have winter interest. Not only do we have the ground covers giving us a winter interest, look at the colors of the ground covers. For example, this is Ogon, so you get a beautiful chartreuse. Over here is Pachysandra, darker green. Over here you've got the Mondo grass. Over here you've got the Acorus, which is again the chartreuse sort of green. You've got the Cephalotaxis, the spreading plum yew, which is a different green. So all these varying greens, you've got ferns like Christmas ferns that are evergreen. So all of these ferns and different plants working together still have great winter interest. This little garden is of course more beautiful probably during the spring, summer, fall, but there's no question it's still a beautiful winter garden. So ground covers have to be considered. So your eye's moving from one area to the other. It's going back and forth across the stream. It's going back and forth between the walkways. So all this is important in the garden design.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many different textures available to us. And at some point, you know, all these beautiful Japanese maples, they're going to be dormant. And thinking about the garden in a year-round, multi-seasonal, faceted way, we need to think about, you know, what is this area going to look like in the dead of winter? And any time of year that you come through, you know, this garden's going to look fantastic. And you've also got pretty much every different texture imaginable that's represented in all these wonderful ground covers. You have the round leaves of Lysomachia, all these nice feathery leaves on many of the sedges, grasses, etc. And then even some really soft textures with like some of the ground cover junipers. It's a beautiful year-round garden.
You've done just what you said. It's all created with just ground covers. Beautiful color, beautiful texture. You have a winter garden.
Jim, I'd like to leave our viewers with some ideas and some tips that they can use to extend the fall season. So for many gardens, you know, maybe fall comes quickly and it's basically just a couple weeks of interest. Here at Gibbs Gardens, you've got nearly 2 months of significant fall interest that goes right into winter, and then other plants that are planned for that. And how would you say would be the best way to approach looking at extending fall interest?
Well, the first thing I always like to do is select plants that are going to give you that 6 to 8 weeks of extended color. Now, of course, here we have hundreds of Japanese maples that are cultivars. They're named varieties. We also have the seedling Japanese maples. As you know, a cultivar is a cutting from a parent tree. A seedling comes from the seeds, and it won't be true to that plant, but it may make beautiful, beautiful colors, and some of them are the most beautiful of all. Now at Gibbs Gardens, we have over 150 named cultivars, but we have thousands, literally 3,000 Japanese maples. So many of those are seedling Japanese maples, and we continue to plant this year. We will plant an additional 1,000 Japanese seedling maples throughout the gardens. But as you look at the gardens and think about the garden, we don't have a problem here, and homeowners don't, about leaf droppage because we have irrigation. Now, if you have a hot, dry summer, and this year we did have dry weather in August, we had it in September, again in October, so most of the leaves in nature, there was not enough moisture, so they fell. But at Gibbs Gardens, with everything being irrigated, our fall color is always beautiful. On a residence, your fall color will be beautiful no matter what. And selecting not only the maples for the cultivars, because you've got the yellows that come in first, always in nature, the chlorophyll drops, and you pick up the yellow greens and then the yellows. The next thing you have are going to be the orange colors, and after that you're going to have the reds come in. But let's not forget the other plants. Hydrangeas, oak leaf hydrangeas, are right now turning yellow, but then the next color, and they're just beginning to show orange red, and more of a red even later. You've got plants that would bloom in the fall. For example, the sasanquas up here behind me. So you want to really be thinking about what plants can you select that will give you interest with flowers and leaf color. So remember, autumn is a second spring when every leaf is a flower.
The diversity in the garden of species, and then even inside of certain species of different cultivars that allow us to get sometimes 2 to 3 times more interest out of a season. And of course, nothing's more boring than a monoculture in the garden. This is what makes this place so exciting. And it really shows all of your hard work and the creativity, but then also the thoughtfulness that you've put into every single aspect of this garden over decades of working tirelessly on it. Jim, it's a beautiful place. Thank you so much for your time with us.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure. Great to see you again.
Each week we travel the country north to south, east to west, visiting some of the most exciting gardens, as well as talking to industry horticulturalists about design principles, new plants, and also how you can be most successful with your home gardens. We also love answering your gardening questions, so visit us on the web at GardenSMART.com.
Bring the outdoors into your everyday life. Bass Pro Shops can outfit all your adventures, even those in your backyard. Bass Pro Shops, your adventure starts here.
A preformed hedge unit with 4 plants grown together, ready to plant. Instant Hedge, designed to create a finished look after installation.
The Jaguar F-Pace.
The most amazing colors in the garden don't end just because summer's over. And today we've met with a veteran gardener to talk to us about how we can keep our gardens vibrant and energetic year-round. If you have questions about anything you've seen today, visit us on the web at GardenSMART.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. And remember, even if you're a master gardener, there's always more to learn. So join us next week for more great gardening tips and ideas as we GardenSMART.